listening to the Patriot Nation podcast, presented by Pat's Pulpit.
Hello and welcome to the Pat's Pulpit podcast. It's Matt St. Jean here. No Pat Lane tonight. He's busy with some parent-teacher conferences. I'm joined right now by the lovely Chad Graff, the Patriots beat writer over at the Athletic. How you doing tonight?
Doing well. Thanks for having me. This is fun to be here.
Thank you very much for coming on. I got a burning question for you right off the bat here. And I think this is right at the front of my mind right now. When you go to your Twitter account at the top, it says perpetual seeker of a good old-fashioned. What makes a good old-fashioned?
Oh, God. A lot of things make a good old-fashioned. Or I should say a lot of things make a bad old-fashioned, where like sometimes I'll walk in a restaurant and look around like, oh, no, I don't think this is the spot to get one. Not a big fan of like the old school muddled cherries. When like the cherries are all kind of floating around. Not a fan of that. You got to go with one ice cube, the big solid like whiskey ice cube. Don't love when it's just a bunch of like crushed ice for a vodka soda or something. Outside of that, I'm not too picky. Of course, love a good little orange peel and the fancy places that will even like burn the orange peel to let it drop in. Awesome, but doesn't have to be that nice. I'm just looking to avoid like the gross muddled cherries and the type of bar that only has like the, one ice option, which I love that kind of bar. I'm just ordering something different than an old fashioned.
Yeah, no, I think the single big ice cube is key. You need that. Any particular whiskey you're going with for it?
Boy, I bounced around a lot. I've been on an Elijah Craig kick recently, a little Four Roses, just to keep things, not going anything fancy. If I could have whatever I wanted, love Blanton's, but obviously that is in a price range that I'm not typically working with. So, that Four Roses kind of level is where I'm usually flying.
I like that. That's a good one. I think I've had, I think it's High Key whiskey, something like that. I think that's what I've got on my bar right now, which is a good one. I haven't tried it in an old fashioned, so I might have to do that after this.
Yeah, give that a whirl after.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit of Patriots stuff here. This is your first year now covering the team. You were out with the Vikings. What's it like being back and covering the Patriots now?
Gosh, it's a whirlwind. I made the move from Minnesota to cover the Patriots. Basically, I can't even remember. It might have been the week that training camp started because I think I missed the very first training camp practice, or the first few even. So it was right in the heart of all of that, which was nuts to be moving halfway across the country in training camp with the family. I've got a wife and young daughter. And of course the dogs, so we're packing all that up, trying to drive across the country. So things were a little bit crazy from that end. But in terms of like the actual football, I've been surprised, I think, on two levels. One is how similar locker rooms are. Like I came in hearing that the Patriots do additional media training and cut down on what players can say and can't say and all of that. By and large, I found the locker room to be any other locker room. It's got players who are friendly to deal with, players who aren't, totally their prerogative, great. But just another locker room. The part that it has been super, super different is I went from starting to cover the Kevin O'Connell, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah regime in Minnesota, where their buzzword that they used 15 times a day in every press conference was collaboration. We're going to work together. We're going to incorporate tons of voices, analytics, scouts who have been here forever, assistant coaches. Everybody's going to have a say in this and determine what we do. And then I come to New England, where it is very centered around one person, and one person decides what we do. And everything flows through that one person. So that's been kind of the biggest organizational change from doing Minnesota to now coming to New England.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned the collaborative nature of it versus the one person making decisions. You had an article this week talking about Mac Jones and the offense, And you were talking about the coaching situation there. From the outside, it appears like it has been very collaborative with Matt Patricia, Joe Judge, and Bill Belichick. What's your read on that situation, the decision-making powers there, and how that's played out this year?
Well, it's fascinating because everything for so long has flowed through Bill Belichick. Josh McDaniels eventually, of course, earned a little more leeway to do what he pleased just because of how long he was here. But everything goes through Bill Belichick here. It amazes me just hearing stories about how small of things and how, minute things that I would generally not think of as a head coach or GM responsibilities. He's still dealing with all of that. And yet, given that, I do think that Matt Patricia has been given leeway to do what he wants, run what he wants. Obviously meets with Bill Belichick every week and comes up with a game plan together and goes over schemes. But Matt Patricia's had a decent amount of say in this. And I think if you start looking for, as the second half goes on, for either culprits to blame if the offense does not play well or someone to applaud if it does, I think you kind of have to start with Matt Patricia. This is obviously an unconventional situation, shall we say, to say the least, given his different job title and the fact that they won't call him offensive coordinator and the fact that he has such little experience on that side of the ball. But I do think he gets a decent amount of say in everything that's happened.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation all around because he's a guy who has a lot of experience. He was with the team in the past. He's had coordinator experience, but not on the offensive side of the ball. And it's just from the outside, obviously, there's a lot of question marks when you look at it. I know Bill Belichick has also said the buck stops with him and the offense is on him. What do you think about that?
It's interesting because he made a point of saying that before the season even began, like went to Dan Shaughnessy and made it very clear, like, hey, this is anything that happens, you can blame me, which I thought was interesting. To me, it kind of was done a little bit to take some of the pressure off of Matt Patricia as he gets going and to alleviate some of that, thinking that, yeah, there's probably going to be some growing pains. I don't think that even Bill Belichick anticipated growing pains lasting as long as these have. And so definitely noteworthy that he said that. But to me, it feels a little bit like he's sticking up for his friend, one of his most trusted advisors, and kind of giving him an out there.
Okay. Because providing that cover, I think, does absolutely make sense. You're not bringing Matt Patricia back in unless you already liked him and thought he could do the job. But also, they're not giving him the coordinator title. Nobody really has a coordinator title on this Patriots team on either side of the ball there, which is certainly an unconventional way of handling everything. And like Bill says, the buck does stop with him. Your most recent article there with Ted Wynn talking about Mac Jones and the offense. It's a great read for anybody that has The Athletic. I suggest you guys go read that right now. But what was kind of the gist of the conversation? What were your takeaways there?
Yeah, Ted is incredible. And for those who aren't on Twitter, he is kind of a film guru on Twitter who breaks down various plays and has a column in The Athletic every week. Just breaking down plays over the weekend that he found interesting, schemes, aspects, trends, what have you. So I asked him for a favor over the bye, basically, and said, hey, to me, this feels like a combination of, when you're looking at Mac Jones' regression, a combination of kind of, I think, a number of things. But I'm curious, Ted, because it feels to me like the biggest culprit is Matt Patricia, the scheme, which, is leading to horrible spacing with the wide receivers and not making it easy for him, but also just the play calls, the rhythm, the leaning away from what he did well a year ago. Tell me what you think. So he spent some time over the Patriots bye weekend looking at everything. And it was just interesting to hear all of his conclusions. There's no, I think, one reason why Mac Jones is regressing or why the offense is not playing well. The offensive line has been bad. Fair reason. Mac Jones has been the second worst quarterback per EPA per dropback when pressured. So combining that with a bad offensive line, well, hey, that's a no-brainer. Even if they get average offensive line play, that helps the offense drastically. So that's one culprit. Mac Jones himself, another culprit. I think the way that this has gone, it seems to me just from the last couple of games, is starting to lose a little bit of faith in the offensive line, where he was starting to bail from pockets that were not collapsing perhaps as quickly as he thought, ran into a sack, and let's face it, has just made one or two throws that he definitely wants back. And then there's the scheme, the play calling, and all of that. And so I think if you're trying to sort blame in different buckets, that Matt Patricia bucket probably fills up the fastest, but there's plenty of it to go around.
Yeah, that is absolutely for sure. It's an offense that has taken a big step back this year. You had also noted in there that the offensive line was banged up during training camp, which will kind of hurt the ability for the chemistry to come together. And one of the thoughts I had watching that Colts game, where you watch the Patriots defense really just do whatever they wanted with the Colts offensive line and the pass rush getting there very quickly. And then you look at the reverse with the Patriots offensive line giving stuff up, and you think back to what Mac had to deal with this summer. How are you supposed to develop when you've got that pass rush that you're facing every single day with that offensive line? Just an awful combination. And I think that definitely explains a little bit of why he looks so skittish out there.
And I think it's easy to get labeled like a Mac Jones apologist, but I think just put yourself in his shoes, going all the way back to, let's say, March, basically, probably February, March. And I think that if you do that and run through everything that's happened, you probably come away with a little bit of sympathy for his situation. Obviously, it's easy to say he makes millions of dollars. He plays football for a living. He's fine. Sure. Agreed. But go back to February. He lost the offensive coordinator who he worked with every day, who helped him become the best rookie quarterback in the NFL. He then finds out that the guys replacing that voice are two guys who have never called plays, who have never been offensive coordinators, and who have barely worked on that side of the ball in the NFL. This is a guy who was a high school standout, who then goes to play at one of the most prolific, probably the most prolific college football program for the best coach of this generation, then goes and plays for Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels. Like, he has had this set up with very good coaching throughout. And then all of a sudden he shows up to these first few mini camps, OTAs. And I got to think he's looking around like, wait a second, what has happened? These are the guys who are going to be in my ear and working with me every day. And they weren't calling plays a year ago, or offensive coordinators. They weren't even scheming up the offenses. And then you go forward, even once they kind of get their idea of a playbook under them, he doesn't have his offensive line due to injuries throughout training camp. He's, in these joint practices where they're going full speed. The offensive line is struggling against the teams that were here for that. And so it just felt like he never had a chance to take a breath and really grow. And I think that's shown. And then, of course, you add all of that to the fact that the Patriots are spending so much money on wide receiver and tight end. And what do they have to show for it? Their best guy is about to get paid in the offseason, Jacoby Myers, from them or from someone else. Their tight ends have not been involved at all. Nelson Aguilar has not been what they thought. Tyquan Thornton, I think, has had some moments, but if you go back, you're putting yourself in Mac Jones's shoes. He was out the first 4 games. Kendrick Bourne is surprisingly benched from the start. So, it's just a bizarre, weird situation that I think if you look at through the lens of Mac Jones, I think you walk away being like, it's not entirely shocking, given all of that he's struggled. I don't think even given all that, he would have struggled to this degree. You look at all the stats, like, for the Pats are playing the Jets this week, so I'm kind of going through all the Jet stuff. Zach Wilson is terrible. He's bad across the board. But as you're looking at those stats, you're like, boy, Zach Wilson stinks here. He stinks here. One of the names next to him in every ranking, Mac Jones, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, Zach Wilson. Like, they've been pretty much the same quarterback this year, which is a frightening thought for the Patriots.
Yeah, and Mac just had his first game without a pick since the Jacksonville game last year. I believe that was week 16, which that's too long of a streak to be turning the ball over. You're never going to be winning like that. And I think in the piece you talked about, and Dan Orlovsky had a video breaking down the Patriots offense too, it's shocking the number of mental mistakes that you see, both from the offensive line and the receivers. And you put it all together, no wonder the quarterback doesn't feel comfortable back there. And I think the receivers have lost 5 fumbles this year, been a couple of interceptions that have been on miscommunications or guys running the wrong routes, guys doing it at the wrong depths. And none of that feels like the Patriots, like the kind of the myth behind the name there. It feels like a very ordinary NFL team for the first time in a while.
Well, and here's the especially, I think, concerning thing is next year is a massive, massive year for Mac Jones, which feels weird to say because it'll only be year 3, but that's kind of how it works in the NFL. When you have that first round pick where you have the 5th-year option for those guys, you have to decide after year 3. And so, if this ends the way that it has started, I think you take a step back. Look, he was really good as a rookie. He wasn't so good in his second year. I think that means in year 3, you have to surround him and give him a chance, surround him with better pieces, surround him with better weapons. And yet the wide receiver class in free agency stinks. Jacoby Myers is probably the best free agent wide receiver. Are you going to use your first round pick on a wide receiver and just hope for the best from a rookie again? Maybe, but recent results haven't been great. Are you going to run back with Matt Patricia and Joe Judge? Maybe, because they, have been as close to Belichick as they have, but it's not exactly leading to much success. So I just don't know what the answer is beyond. And I know we've got a lot to discuss, I guess, with the Jets and the rest of the season, but I'm curious, what do you think about the big picture with what potentially they do in the offseason to try to, I guess, have a clearer picture of Mac Jones before you have to make a decision on that 5th-year option?
Well, you're kind of between a rock and a hard place here in that the guys around him don't seem to be getting the job done, but you don't want to be in a situation where your quarterback in his 3rd year has his 3rd offensive coordinator and where he's got 2 or 3 new starters on the offensive line and where you're spending big money on pass catchers again, trying to solve it. I don't know what the answer is here. I think really the only answer is to kind of get whatever it is you do right. Like, it sounds kind of silly, but it doesn't really matter how you address it. You have to make the right decisions this offseason, because if you don't, you're going to have kind of wasted a first round pick on a quarterback and you're going to be hitting the reset button for the whole thing. I think that right tackle spot or left tackle spot, depending on how they address it, is going to be a huge need. Probably going to have to use your first round pick there if there's somebody worth it. And then you just see how things fall from there. But really, I think the best case scenario is for things to kind of come together a little bit over the back half of the season here and to get some of these answers to find out if some of these guys should be sticking around next year. Do you think we're going to see that happen? Do you think we're going to see a little bit of growth out of the bye?
Yes and no. So here's where I'm kind of at as I've been thinking about that is I do think that the floor is so low right now that I think the offense has to get better. And yet I don't think it's going to happen very quickly. The Jets have a top 5 defense. The Bills have a top 5 defense. So 2 of the next 3 Patriots opponents are just insanely good defenses that could slow down a quarterback who is playing well, who's playing in rhythm, who has faith in receivers and coordinators and offensive line. Think about what they can and could do to a quarterback who has none of those things. So I do think that there's reasons it could get better. I think we may see that kind of on the back stretch of this season because coming out of the bye, I've been so impressed by this Robert Saleh defense, by what Leslie Frazier is doing. And, I don't think that Leslie Frazier gets enough credit. He should be getting more interviews to have another shot at the head coaching gig. The defense that he has put together in Buffalo, while Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen get all the credit, like that is just an awesome, awesome defense. And so I think it should concern the Patriots what the offense is going to look like in 2 of these first 3 games with those opponents. And if the defense plays as the number 1 defense as they are in EPA per play, then great, you're going to be in all these games. But I think it's a bigger ask for a defense to be sustainable over several games than it is an offense. And so that, I think, is what concerns me, at least coming out of these first few games.
Yeah, 2 or 3 good players on offense can win you games. You really need all 11 on defense to be playing well, especially when you're going against a guy like Josh Allen twice down the stretch here. I want to talk about the offensive line for a second, because in practice the other day, at least the reports were that Trent Brown, he was there, but not practicing, or practicing a little bit with Wynn back at left tackle, Kajust at right tackle. Can you shed any more light on what's going on there?
Not really. It's interesting that they, I think, are willing to try Yodny at right tackle and do whatever they can, but Trent Brown is not on the injury report, and I don't think they're going to take Trent Brown out of the game. So if I had to guess, I think that's just kind of getting a look at Yodny and potentially having Isaiah as a super flexible guy who can go from left guard to left tackle to right tackle. It's fascinating to me that they have tried as many different combinations as they have. I'm used to covering bad offensive lines. I was in Minnesota for several years. But one thing that they never did was switch around the offensive line. They kind of picked 5 and tried to coach up that unit and put value on the continuity and knowing who is playing next to you in a way that the Patriots aren't. I don't know that one is the right answer over the other, but it's just interesting and curious to me that they're still tinkering with this, when if you go back and put yourselves in the shoes of July, I think we all probably would have said that the offensive line is, and at least should be, a strength of this team.
Yeah, I think on paper, this offensive line shouldn't be worse than average. And I think Isaiah Wynn regressing as hard as he did is a shock to everybody. I can't imagine the people on the team saw this coming. Andrews also, the age is starting to show just a little bit there. And Strange is going up against a rookie wall. I think kind of the buy here is this is the last point where you can really tinker with it and try to set something for down the stretch. We'll see if what they put together ends up working. And like you said, that's a Jets defense that they'll bring a pass rush. So we'll find out really quickly if this offensive line can be up to the task against something like that.
Which, I mean, makes me think that between the way that Mac Jones has struggled against pressure, the way that Zach Wilson has struggled against pressure, makes me think that this could be like an off the charts ugly game, like Iowa playing Minnesota. We get that game on Saturday where I think the over under is like 33 points. This one kind of feels like that. Like I wish there was a prop bet of what has more points scored, Iowa, Minnesota on Saturday or New England, New York on Sunday.
I might be taking the over on safeties or defensive points in this game.
Yeah, I mean, last game, there was nearly that pick 6, of course, that looked so bad for Mac Jones. I got to think that the odds for a defensive touchdown are different for this one than they are for, say, Kansas City and Buffalo or something like that.
Yeah. This is going to be one of those games on Sunday, I think. You mentioned, obviously, you covered Minnesota. You talked about the offensive line up there and what you covered. You also covered Kirk Cousins. And Mac Jones has drawn a lot of comparisons to Kirk Cousins. I don't necessarily agree with them from what I've seen. I wanted to get your thoughts, though, since you've seen them both up close.
It's not a comparison that I put a lot of stock into. I think because they do definitely have some similarities. I think there are 3 massive differences in their game that I hope I can keep straight for the rest of this ramble. But one, I think let's start with situational awareness. That is where Kirk Cousins has really, really struggled. And I think his reputation has been built on that, where it'll be 3rd and 11 and he'll throw it 3 yards past the line of scrimmage to somebody who's covered, because in his eyes, that's where my reads take me. He's very robotic in there's my first read, there's my second, neither are open. Even though there's 10 seconds left and we're down by 4, I'm not going to force it to them because my 3rd read is over here. If you're in a great offensive scheme that makes people open, and the coordinator or coach just wants you, boom, boom, boom. There's your reads, make the right read, throw the ball. That can be awesome. Kyle Shanahan, maybe the best or one of the best coaches offensively, and maybe even as a head coach, loves Kirk Cousins, wanted Kirk Cousins before he got Jimmy G, because that's what he's looking for in that offense. And Kirk Cousins is so good at that. Doesn't get enough credit, I think, for a lot of things he does. He gets, I think, miscast as just a check down guy. That's not who he is. He checks down too often on 3rd and 11 or 4th and 6 and throws a 2-yard pass. That's where he's really bad. And I think that, to Mac Jones's credit, is where he is very good, or at least was last year and in college, of having good situational awareness and knowing what to do with the ball. I think where they differ, and this is to Kirk Cousins' credit, is Kirk Cousins' floor is so high, which is the reason that the Vikings went after him in the first place. Like, yes, he's limited in his ceiling is also quite low. There's not a whole lot of range and volatility that you're going to get season over season with Kirk Cousins. But to put yourself in the shoes of the Vikings coming off 2017 when they signed him, they had just gone to the NFC Championship game. This is the year that the Eagles beat them, and then, of course, went on to beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl. The Vikings
I've repressed a lot of memories from that year.
Yeah, I should have just stopped the NFC Championship game.
They didn't play a Super Bowl.
I don't even know what state it was in. It couldn't have been Minnesota. The Vikings felt like, hey, we just need competent quarterback play with this defense from Mike Zimmer, and we're going to be there. And so they looked and said, Kirk Cousins has a massively high floor. That's where we'll go get him. I think Mac Jones has shown a little more volatility. Obviously, I think we see now his floor is not that high. Will it become that? Maybe. But that's another difference. And then I think the last difference between them, and this one is more in Mac Jones's credit, is, and I'm trying to think of the best way to say this without completely disparaging Kirk Cousins, but Mac Jones is a super likable guy who players in the locker room gravitate toward and want to be around. And, I think one of the interesting parts of the Vikings season to me is the Vikings bet basically by hiring Kevin O'Connell, who is a super likable guy, gets along well with everybody, has a great rapport. They kept Kirk Cousins when I didn't think they would, in part because it was a bet that Kevin O'Connell could bring out the best in Kirk. Kevin O'Connell once said, part of my goal is to help Kirk out both basically on the field and off the field. And so I think Kirk's getting better. You're seeing the chains on the plane that you never would have seen from him before. He's made some strides in that area, but that's another spot that I think is, if you're looking at the tallies, that's a check in the Mac Jones column.
Well, I think that kind of mental aspect, and just you can see the way his teammates like him on the field. You can see why too with his toughness. He takes shots that he probably shouldn't be taking out there, and he'll throw his body around. In that first Jets game, one thing I noticed was Mac took a shot kind of close to out of bounds, and the guy was flexing over him after the play, and Tyquan Thornton, who's a rookie, comes over and he's pushing guys away, protecting his quarterback. You can tell how much even the new guys come in and like him right away. And even all the press conferences, even though Mac has struggled, people constantly rave about how much they like him and how good he is behind the scenes. And I think when you put it all together, it tells me that Mac knows the mental side is there. It's just not translating to the football field. And that's where the breakdown is right now.
Yeah. And the more I think about it, the more I don't know exactly how or when it gets better. I think that Vikings game is an opportunity. Their defense has not been very good, but part of Kevin O'Connell's whole belief is, and this kind of leads into a separate fascinating discussion about the league, is he wants to take away your deep passes, limit your passing game as much as possible. And if you can run it on the Vikings, he'll tip his cap and say, good, keep doing it. We are going to bet that you're not going to be able to string this together because of how difficult it is to pull off a successful run play. We don't think that you're going to have the patience or the ability to do this for not just a whole drive, but then another drive and another drive. So you can run on the Vikings. Their goal is to take away the pass. And so I think it's such a tough way for Mac Jones to come out of the second half with these matchups that he's going to face.
Yeah, and for a guy who was trying to make some plays down the field too, it seems like he's trying to push his game in that direction in a way that's becoming more and more difficult to do in the NFL. He's not the only guy struggling at trying to push the ball down the field, and it's a different game now than it was even the first week when Mac came in. Things have changed to that drastically, which I don't think that's easy for any young quarterback to handle that kind of a change.
Certainly. There have been so many changes for him that it's not shocking he's struggling. I think it's just shocking that it's to this degree. And I think perhaps most frustrating, just given that the quarterback selected around him, Trevor Lawrence, is seeing a little bit of a jump. I don't know it's quite to where people thought he would be, but he's showing, if you put some competent coaching around me, I can make some throws. Obviously, starting with that Patriots game, Justin Fields has taken his game to a whole nother level. And that's where I think it just is a little bit frustrating for Patriots fans to see. But at least I get to see Zach Wilson on Sunday. And if you want a quarterback that'll make you feel good about yours, Zach Wilson right now is one of the only ones in the league playing worse.
Yeah, no, and that game, the last time they played, just watching him scramble around, looked like a chicken with his head cut off.
It was wild. That, I think I'll always have seared in my memory him rolling out of the pocket, having no idea what to do, apparently not knowing that the big white stripe on the side, you can just throw it past that, and then the other team can't intercept it. Wild performance. I'm actually, very curious to see how he does in this rematch. He has been very cocky, I think, in his comments, all the way going back to the press conference from that day, and then this week saying nobody has any idea what's going on here, who's not in the building, seems to think that they're going to be just fine against the Patriots defense. And so I'm interested to see how much he has learned and grown from that game, or if he's still going to make the same mistakes. I think that's pretty telling.
Yeah, I was up in the nosebleeds for that game, and let me tell you, every single time he started to run, I just heard a groan from the Jets fans around me. And it was just, by the end of the game, they were laughing too. So that was something. I do want to talk about how the defense matches up with them. One more topic here on the offense, though. You mentioned change around Mac Jones. You predicted in one of your articles, Jakobi Meyers is going to be wearing a new uniform next season. Do you really think the Pats are going to let him go? And are you hearing something about this, or is this just a guess?
So I don't think that the Patriots want to let him go. He's obviously their only reliable, productive wide receiver right now, at a position they just can't afford to lose him. My thinking on this is the wide receiver market has gone bonkers. We saw the deal that Christian Kirk got and some of the other wide receivers who are free agents, the deals that are looming for the Jamar Chases and Justin Jeffersons that are just going to be massive record-setting, market-shifting deals. And so when you look at who the free agent wide receivers are going to be, it is just a really, really bad class. It's Juju Smith-Schuster and Jakobi Meyers and a bunch of wide receiver threes. And so I think that there's going to be a team that has tons and tons of cap space, kind of trying to get relevant again. Maybe they've got a rookie quarterback or something, and they're willing to overpay because they can. And if somebody gives him the Christian Kirk contract, are the Patriots going to match it? Like, unless Jakobi Meyers is willing to take a steep hometown discount, which maybe he does, I have no inclination as to whether he would or wouldn't. I don't think that the Patriots are going to give him the highest offer, given the way that the wide receiver market has gone and who else is available. And so if that's the case, I just think that there's a decent chance he says, hey, I'm a guy who didn't make much money on my first contract. I want to get paid now. And that opportunity, I think, awaits him after this season.
And especially if there's questions about what the future of this offense looks like, I can see him kind of maybe saying, I don't know if I want to stick around here. I might be able to be more productive somewhere else. Obviously, I know he's close with Max, so maybe that's part of it. But Patriots with around $60 million in cap space this offseason, they have to give up a third of that to keep Myers. That's where things get really interesting there.
While you got a deal with the offensive line and all the other issues you have.
Yeah, a lot of issues on this team. It is kind of incredible that they're going to have that much cap space given how much they are spending on some of these players, especially Jonnu Smith's going to be around through the rest of that contract. I mean, you just can't get out of it. And Hunter Henry's presumably going to be on the team as well next year, and that's going to be a lot of money. You're going to have, I don't know, $30-40 million tied up in just the two of them before you get to anything. So really, really just weird roster construction point for this team. At least it's helped out by having a couple of young studs on the defensive side of the ball. Jack Jones, Kyle Duggar, Marcus Jones coming on a little bit. I think is this the best defense in the NFL?
I keep going back and forth. Per EPA per play, yes, it is. I'm not ready to say, though, that it's the best. I think that they benefited from a Colts team that was in such complete shambles and disarray. Sam Ellinger is not an NFL quarterback. He's not even close to the best quarterback on his own team. Frank Reich was just throwing everything against the wall and hoping that something stuck, and it did not. So they benefited from that. I think as the schedule gets difficult, I would expect them to stay as a top 5 defense, but the Broncos, I think, could surpass them. The Bills or Jets potentially could surpass them. The 49ers have played some really good defense. So I think that the Patriots are definitely in that mix with those teams. But I'm just not ready to say that they're up there. And we'll see if, what happens with Matthew Judon. That's kind of the fascinating one to me, as a year ago, his production dipped later in the season. They clearly seem to want to avoid that again by having him play about 10% fewer snaps so far, saving him up and making sure that he's healthy down the stretch. His health and his ability to wreak havoc on the game the way that he has so far is massively, massively important. If he can continue to do that, great, then they can be a number 1 defense. If not, if there's natural regression that comes with having 11.5 sacks in an absurd 10 games, normally you'd expect regression from that. If that happens, it wouldn't surprise me if they slip to, number 4 or 5 or something like that.
And obviously, you haven't played the Bills twice. That's going to be kind of the determining factor. You can't call yourself the top defense if you struggle in those games. This team has gone, if you take out the weird wind game last year up in Buffalo, they've gone 3 games in a row now against the Bills without forcing a punt. So that is...
I didn't know it was that bad.
Yeah, that not a winning strategy. You do have to get the ball back at some point. That'll be the goal on that one. That's the standard. You force a 1 punt and the defense is improved. But yeah, I think you talked about Judon and how well he's played. You talked about the emergence of Dietrich Wise. I think a couple other important guys here have been Josh Uche and Anthony Jennings, guys who have really, Jennings was a liability as a rookie. You couldn't put him out there, missed last season, and now has come on as a guy you can trust to go out there and make plays, especially against the run. And Uche seems to be a little bit more disciplined when he's out there against any kind of misdirection, and he was always an explosive pass rusher. I think having some of those guys out there helps in allowing Judon to rest a little bit and getting production from more than just one spot on the line of scrimmage when it comes to rushing the passer.
Certainly those 2 guys, but also Dietrich Wise. It is wild to me. Like, you don't generally see breakouts 5-6 years into an NFL career. Like, that just doesn't happen. You either don't get the chance because teams say, hey, you're not that valuable, you're getting older, you're gone, or you're just not good enough. It's crazy that he has gotten older, gone through all these stops, played as many games as he has, and then sets his career high for sacks 7 games into the season. It's absurd how good Dietrich Wise is playing compared to what was expected of him. And he's playing considerably more than basically anybody else on that defensive line, getting a ton of snaps, still productive. So him staying this productive is important. Like, Uche, I think, gives you something and is a nice piece, but I think needs to be kind of that third guy behind those 2. If they all stay healthy, like, that's a defense that they're going to get after the passer, which is huge when you consider, I don't even think we've talked about the strength of this team yet, which is that secondary. which is surprising. And so if you give a quarterback 2.3 seconds to throw the ball and that group of good to very good cornerbacks plus great safeties only has to cover that long, that's a recipe for a lot of success.
It absolutely is. And Wise is a guy who last season during the Tampa Bay game, Chris Collinsworth made a comment that he was the best player on the Patriots defense, which we all kind of laughed at the time, but it is way closer to being true than I think anybody expected it would be when he said that.
He's the number 26, and not that I think this is the end all be all, of edge rushers on Pro Football Focus. He is higher than Judon right now. Is that true? I don't necessarily know. I will say we do tend to overinflate the importance of sacks. It's more important to basically be in the backfield, and if you are consistently, the sacks will come. I don't mean to take away from Judon, more just to say Wise has been that freaking good.
Yeah, he's been fantastic. And we talk about all these guys rushing the passer. The name we haven't mentioned is Christian Barmore, who's missed a lot of time with an injury. People expected the year 2 jump there. I know Mac Jones is going to draw the headlines, but Barmore is, with all the time he's missed, this hasn't been the season we expected from him. He is expected. He's at practice, so he should be back here after the bye. I'm really excited to see how this defense looks once he's back in there.
And still just limited the last couple practices. Like, I think the Patriots defense has been so good that there hasn't really been time to talk about disappointments or weaknesses. But the interior of that D line just has not been very good. Barmore's injury, a part of it. Godshaw hasn't been very good. And so I think it's just a little bit disappointing what you've gotten from there, especially since Barmore seemed poised for such a good year. And I think still could have a very strong second half, but the knee injury is not completely behind him. He's still limited in practice. I would guess he'll play, but it's not a definite. And so, I think what he gives you is so valuable, which is occupying more guys, if nothing else, in the interior, still having a pass rush on the interior on third downs and obvious passing situations. Just gives you another option with Wise playing this go with Judon, with Uche. Like, you've got a bunch of dudes up there getting after the passer. You just got to see it from him now, which is, I think, kind of disappointing. Obviously, the injury plays a big part of that, but what he does in the second half, I think, will be pretty telling.
Yeah, I agree. And you talk about the disappointment factor. When you have a top 50 pick there in Barmore, and then the amount of money they're spending on Godshaw, and then you look at the Ravens game, the Bears game, the Packers game, that's not the performance you would expect from the interior. And obviously, it's not just defensive tackle that's contributing in those tough games against the run, but you'd like to see a little bit better play from those guys. And we'll see. They're not going to really face an elite rushing offense, I don't think, here in the second half of the season, which should help. But
yeah, I'm kind of quickly scanning. We'll see. I'm interested to see how much the Jets decide to run it, perhaps scarred by Zach Wilson's last performance. On a short week, maybe the Vikings lean more on Dalvin Cook, but any play that you give it to somebody other than Justin Jefferson also kind of feels like a sin if you're the Vikings. But yeah, I guess they've already played the Browns, Ravens, and Bears, which are 3 of the 4 best rushing teams, at least by EPA. I guess the Jets are up there as a top 10 EPA rushing team, which is a little bit surprising. So yeah, they're going to need some sort of interior push to try to slow down some of these rushing attacks. Cincinnati can run the ball too. So there are going to be some challenges that this group's going to have to step up for.
yeah, and when you play the Bills, they don't have that traditional rushing attack as much, really, but Josh Allen can always run. And that's been an issue for them. I think that's where guys like Uche and Judon, Jennings will be huge. I think Jabril Peppers, Kyle Duggar, Adrian Phillips, they're all going to come into that conversation of how you slow him down, which I think Duggar and Peppers are both having very, very good years in that secondary.
Peppers specifically is the one I think that surprised me. I don't know. Maybe it was my fault for my expectations not being higher. But given how many good safeties they had, I just, A, didn't think he'd get that much playing time. And B, when he did, I didn't know, is he just kind of a physical, hard-hitting guy in the box? Can he actually cover? he's been awesome. Just one of the, I think, pleasant, surprising signings, doing everything from special teams to with an injury to Duggar, with Phillips having an injury early on, like gotten a little bit more playing time than I would have guessed. And I think Bill Belichick has to be very, very pleased with what he's gotten from Jabril so far.
I agree. And I think the emotional aspect too, you can see that kind of spark he brings to the team. He plays with a lot of energy, sometimes too much energy at times. He got a 15-yard penalty in that Jets game, but he brings it. Hey, and as a guy that's a Michigan football fan, let me tell you, it's nice to see him succeeding. Yeah.
Wow. I'm working on a separate story, but ended up asking him recently just because I was curious what his recruiting process was like, because he was the number, I think, 3 overall recruit, only behind Myles Garrett and somebody else that was just off the charts good. And I was thinking and hoping he was going to have some crazy stories of being the number 3 overall recruit and this guy coming after me. He didn't. He was like, yeah, I took a visit to Michigan and I really liked it more than the other schools. And so that's why I went. So unfortunately, nothing fun on that front.
Oh, man. Well, he's from New Jersey here, not too far from me. I remember people I went to college with too, went to high school, I think, with him and used to watch him play, which was kind of crazy.
One of the most fun college careers just to watch.
Oh, I mean, he did everything. I think at times when you watch this Patriots offense, you wonder if Jabril Peppers or Marcus Jones could give them a jolt on that side of the ball.
Yeah, I've done a story in the past, and I think I might do it again with the Patriots, but just asking every player, like, hey, what is your favorite play you've ever made? High school, college, NFL, whatever. And I was so hoping that he would have an awesome answer of like, yeah, so at Michigan, I had this one punt return where I made 11 guys look silly. And he didn't. He's a little more diplomatic. He wants to be a coach one day, which is interesting. And I think he's working on his diplomatic responses and not giving up too much. But I was so hoping that he would have some crazy anecdote about a kickoff or a punt return that he had at Michigan.
I bet he'll have one once his playing career's done. Yeah. He might not. Maybe that's where that Patriots media training is coming in handy.
Fair enough.
That's the one where he gets you. Really just one quick question here on special teams, then we can talk about the Pats-Jets game specifically for a minute. But you see Bailey on the injury report now with the back injury. They brought in long snappers this week. Do we know what's going on with all that?
Not entirely, but Bailey's concerning, I think, even if he's healthy enough that you got to be wondering what entirely is going on. So far, they've insisted that there's not much. There's little things that they want to clean up, nothing major. Talked about just his drop point and things like that. But whatever it is, like they just paid this guy, and now they're getting some of the worst punting in the NFL, which is a massive problem when you are a team that leans so much on special teams as Bill Belichick does. They are a team that, because of the way that they're built with a very good defense and so far a poor offense, like they need to be winning the field position battles. And while punt doesn't directly feel like a way that dictates where your offense gets the ball, it kind of is. If your opponent's starting inside their 10 and 3 and out like that, there's your opportunity, flip the field. And they just haven't been able to do that with Bailey so far. So I keep thinking his track record should give him a little more lenience, and week after week, my confidence in that continues to drop. And so if he plays against the Jets and struggles again, I almost wonder if it's time to make a change. And given new rules, it's really not that hard to. You could use one of your practice squad call-ups to bring somebody up. Bailey, you never have to officially cut. He's still on the roster, just inactive for that game. Like there's a way to do it and just see what you have in somebody else, or send a message, or just give Bailey time to heal from whatever this newfound back injury is. I just think that could be coming down the pipeline soon.
Yeah, that could be interesting. And now that he's on the injury report too, you could see a little IR stint for him potentially too to save that roster spot. You basically
the old baseball arm fatigue for the pitcher who's struggling.
Exactly. With his contract too, you basically can't cut him this year or next year, which it's kind of like, I think it's $4 million against the cap, something like that. So it's crazy. We're in a situation where we're worrying about cap hits for punters and roster building, but It's where the team is at. And the biggest issue facing this team is probably that none of your high value contracts are working out outside of Judon.
Right. They've got to be winning on the margins right now. And just contract wise, I mean, and those margins are not being successful. And so even though this offseason is when they should have lots of cap space, like every time you've got Jake Bailey underperforming, that takes away from maybe the little bit extra you would need to keep Jacoby Myers. So those are meaningful deals.
Yeah, and you need depth to fill out a roster. It's not about the top 22 or 25. You need to be 50, 55, 60 players deep with the practice squad to really field a good team, and that money adds up. Let's look at this game this week. Pats Jets, the second time around here. The spread on this one is Patriots favored by 3 points. Do you think that's fair, and do you expect them to cover?
I saw 3.5, and when I saw 3.5, I thought, God, I'd be really tempted to take the Jets just because this is going to be such a low-scoring game. I think this is a game that feels like some weird things could happen. You could have a weird score. It would not surprise me if there's just an ugly, odd score stemming from whether it's a safety or whatever strange play. This just feels like a weird, ugly, low-scoring game to me. So if I could get 3.5, I'm taking the Jets. And yet, I think that the Jets probably have the better roster, but I just feel so silly even contemplating taking the New York Jets to come to Gillette Stadium, beat Bill Belichick with a horrible quarterback, a young quarterback at that, given all of Bill Belichick's prowess against those quarterbacks coming out of the bye. That just makes no sense to me. So even though I think if you could trade where the Jets are at in their roster construction with the Patriots, I think you make that trade. Even given that, I'm taking the Patriots. I just, this streak has gone on as long as it has for a reason, for reasons that extend beyond Tom Brady, until the Jets prove that they can beat the Patriots. I'm not picking the Jets.
Yeah, that's the way I lean too. Although I will say, if I were putting money on this, I wouldn't. I would just not bet on this game, not touch it with anything. You're not going to get anything fun out of this one.
Do you know what the over/under is?
Let me pull that up here.
Because I would guess this is just such a low-scoring bat off. This could be one of the rare NFL games that's in the 30s, maybe 39 and a half.
It started at 40.5 and has worked its way down to 39.5.
Okay. All right. I was going to say, if you get 40, I'd go under on that. I'd probably still go under, to be honest, on 39.5.
Yeah. This might be first to 6 wins. It might be that kind of day, unless we're talking 6. We might actually get a high scoring game here because of the defensive points. So
right.
we'll see. We'll see what happens there. Who's the X factor for the Patriots on Sunday for them to get a win here?
I think it's got to be Isaiah Wynn. These struggles have been, well documented and chronicled, but the Jets have some decent edge rushers, which is a little bit new for them. Their late first round pick, it's hard to say their first round pick because they've had so many. Jermaine Johnson is starting to come on for them. They rotate their defensive line like very few, so they are always fresh. I think that's a huge matchup. We outlined earlier how bad Mac Jones has been against pressure. You want to, have him have some success and alleviate the risk of turnovers. Well, then Cole Strange better be able to help against Williams up front, and Isaiah Wynn better be able to hold his own at right tackle. And if those two things don't happen, I think that the passing game is in for a long day.
Yeah, and then this might be a lot like the first game, and it's going to be close with turnovers, and it's going to hinge on a play or two.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's more likely probably what happens is we're in the fourth quarter and just waiting for one of these quarterbacks to, I was going to say to make a play, or maybe it's better said, wait for them to make a play in the wrong direction.
Yeah, and it's going to be one of those games on Sunday. It'll be a cold weather game too. So, it might be a lot of running. I think if the Patriots can establish the run here, even a little bit, David Andrews being back, that probably helps out a lot too, if you're trying to make things work there. But that's that. That'll be 1:00 on CBS, I believe. That should be the kickoff time for that one at Gillette Stadium. that'll be the preview portion of this. We're gonna do a little trivia time here this week in sports history. I know Pat's not here, but we got to do this segment without him. So yeah, let's get into it. I'll play a little audio here. This is Pat's favorite thing in the world.
All right, perfect.
And now for something we think you'll really like. This week in sports history.
All right, I got two for us. I know you have one, so I can go first, and then we'll throw it to you.
Okay.
I'm going way back on one of these. This week in 1928, the Boston Garden opened. The day we're recording this, November 17th. This is the day that it held its first event, and then the 20th, the day of the game there on Sunday, was the first time it hosted a Bruins game. I think 7,000 people attended, which was 2,000 more than the building held, and people were breaking windows and doors to get in. So that sounds about right.
That's wild.
What do you got?
So I, didn't know exactly what direction to go with this. Didn't know if we could go beyond football. So I did. My roots are kind of in hockey, and I love looking at records that are just not going to be broken. And when you think records that are not going to be broken, you got to look immediately to Wayne Gretzky, who did some ridiculous things that, messing around on Hockey Reference are just mind-boggling, like Jerry Rice type stuff. And this stat of what he did this week jumped out to me. Wayne Gretzky this week in 1986 was playing in his 575th game. In that 575th game, he scored his 500th goal. Not his 500th point, not his 500th assist. His 500th goal came in his 575th game. It's just insane to think about a hockey player basically having a bad night when he didn't score.
Yeah, he is like when you create a player in the NHL video game and you're just kind of scoring like crazy. That was Gretzky. Yes. Like, I think my favorite Gretzky fact is that he and his brother are the highest scoring pairing in NHL history.
Yes. That's so good.
Oh, I think his brother had how many? I don't even know how many points he had. It might have just been one.
Yeah, just a perfect. There's so many good Wayne Gretzky stats.
Yeah, like you said, you can go down the Hockey Reference wormhole on that one.
Yeah, brother Brent had 4 points.
Wow, look at that! And then how many did Gretzky finish with?
2,857. So together, 2,861. Thanks, Brent.
It wouldn't be complete without Brent's contributions there.
Right.
Yeah.
The stat's impossible without him.
It really is. It really is. My fact here also, November 18th, 2012, Patriots beat the Colts 59-24 at Gillette Stadium. That was Aqib Talib's first game for the Patriots. He and Alfonso Dennard each had a pick six off of Andrew Luck in that one. I remember watching that one. That was one heck of a game.
I remember Dennard because I'm a Nebraska fan, and he was a very good cornerback for the Huskers. And, those were different times, I suppose, when Nebraska had NFL quality players.
Yeah, it's been a bit there. Hopefully things will get on the upswing for them soon. Maybe.
I'm not holding my breath, but maybe. Maybe Matt Rule, who I remember watching in drunk practices and being like, I can't believe this guy's an NFL coach. How times have changed for me as a Nebraska fan, and I'd be like, hey, Matt Rule looks pretty good. Maybe he could do something.
Are you hopping on the Urban Meyer bandwagon there?
I'm not. Could he win? Would he win at Nebraska? Yeah, probably. The Big Ten West stinks. But I'd rather roll the dice on Matt Rule and see what happens.
Yeah, you never want to sell your soul to Urban Meyer.
Right. Many people have done it, and few have lived to be happy about their decision.
Well, you'll get wins. You just it comes at a price.
It comes at a steep price.
Yeah, yes, it does. All right. Well, thank you for coming on the show here, Chad. Where can people find your work?
Writing over at The Athletic, we'll have tons of sales coming up for Black Friday and Cyber Monday. So if you're not a subscriber, consider giving it a shot. We've got 30 plus NFL writers and writers covering your favorite teams from across the country. So check out The Athletic.
Yeah, I can't recommend it enough. I've been a subscriber since I think day one of the Boston edition of it too. And
I can thank Jeff Howe for that, I guess.
yeah, you're filling big shoes there here in this
Exactly.
this Patriots role. But yeah, definitely go check him out. Check him out at Chad Graff on Twitter while Twitter still exists. Definitely go do that. And thanks everybody for listening. We're gonna have a show, I believe, on Sunday after the game. So stay tuned for that one, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.